Hi guys, it's your boy Hyperfixation Station here, and I'm back with another video, and this one's very interesting. So, as you may have noticed, well, there's a lot of games down here. This is a tier list. I'm on tiermaker.com, and well, I'll give you 5 seconds, okay? I'll give you 5 seconds to guess what this tier list might be about. Alright, did you manage to guess? Well, if you guessed Ed, put it down in the comments below, by the way. I don't want you fuckers to cheat, okay? I want that down in the comments right fucking now. Good. You did it. Good boy. I might let you out of the basement for a few minutes. Alright, so this is my what Fnaf games were personally scary to me as a first time experience, because yes, I believe that Fnaf is probably one of the franchises to use as an example of how horror games can just really stop affecting you the more like you play them and when you get used to them. You know, I think that, yeah, Fnaf honestly is a big bit of guilt for this, so I decided to go off of what my first time experiences were, and by this I mean watching Let's Players or watching my friends play IRL. Believe it or not, back in school I did used to have friends. Alright, so the tiers are pretty simple. Legit traumatized me IRL, scary, had its moments, didn't get to me personally, legit not scary, and then the non-horror / joke games because they were never supposed to be horror. Right, so I think we should probably just get into it. If you want some background, I may not have done many Fnaf videos. I've done like one Fnaf adjacent video, then one Roblox Fnaf video. I am planning to do more in the future. For example, Halloween, I think I'm going to do a playthrough of Fnaf 4, or at least get as far in it as I can. So yeah, you have that to look forward to. But I've actually been a Fnaf fan since the motherfucking beginning, baby. I'm an OG, okay? I became a Fnaf fan in 2014, back when I was at the way too fucking young age to be getting hyper-fixated on a series about child serial killers at like age like 7. Yeah, 7, I think. Yeah, it would have been about 7 years old I first got attached to this series, and I've been attached to it ever since. Now, with that out of the way, I think we can get into this. So this one, I actually don't really know what this one is. I'm trying to think, is this made... I know it's one of the joke games, but I can't remember exactly what one of the joke games it is. I think this might be either Fake Fnaf 5 or Fake Fnaf 2, I think, but don't quote me on that. That obviously goes into non-horror / joke games. Now, well, we're starting it off fucking good, aren't we? Fnaf 4. Oh boy. So, Fnaf 4, i.e. the one game I was never able to play despite being presented with the opportunity to several times. That's right, I was too pussy to play this fucking game. Genuinely, just looking at the title screen alone was enough to give me like nightmares for a week. This goes up to legit traumatized me IRL for a very specific reason. So, one thing that people may not know, especially if you didn't watch the Roblox Fnaf video, even though I really don't get into it much there. So, 1, yes, Fnaf 4 is genuinely the scariest Fnaf game for me, 100%. 2, yes, so the only way to really get to me, right, so horror-wise, I'm pretty good with horror. Jump scares don't get to me. Don't, listen, the Hoi IV videos might tell you that it does, but look at the context of that video. I was playing with maximum volume, and I was, like, intensely focusing, like, microing and macroing, like, tens and hundreds of divisions across multiple fronts. You know, so I think it's fairly understandable that occasionally jump scares got me. Bearing in mind, I cut out the jump scares where it didn't get me. You only got the ones where it did, so it's kind of a biased video in that sense. But yeah, so jump scares don't tend to get to me that much. As well as most typical forms of horror, body horror doesn't get to me. Like tension, just an atmospheric horror doesn't really get to me. The only horror that ever gets to me is very realistic horror. So stuff like Fears to Fathom and stuff, and Blair Witch Project, stuff like that. And the only other type of horror that really gets to me is existential dread. You know, like, but sort of that real thing, you know, like the feeling that, because I'm someone who genuinely struggles a lot with paranoia. Like, if you want, like, an actual in-depth look into, like, a sort of behind the curtain of hyperfixation station, yeah, I do suffer a lot with really, really severe paranoia. So, when it comes to, like, existential dread, I'm sort of talking about this shit, like, for example, like, pipes. I absolutely hate pipes and, like, gas systems, because every single moment I think about pipes, I constantly think, you know what, at any single moment, one of these could burst, and I could blow up in a fiery hellfire, right? And if a horror game can give me that same feeling, then they are officially going on the shit list, okay? And Fnaf 4 is one of those games, so, and it touches on both of them. That's why it got to me so much. So, first of all, it's like, if Fnaf 4 was not set in a house, then it would not have got to me as much as it did. Right, the setting of the game really got to me. If you don't know, Fnaf 4 is set in the house of a child. I was like 8 years old when Fnaf 4 came out, like 8 or 9, and I lived in a house. Yeah, you can imagine that concept was pretty real to me at that time. You know, even the title screen alone was enough to legit have me shitting my pants. And then the existential dread thing comes from the fact that I actually don't have the greatest hearing. I tend to not hear things the greatest. I don't have, like, anything wrong with my hearing, I just don't have a great sense of hearing. So, it's, it's not like a serious thing, I just don't have the greatest sense of hearing in the world. And, yeah, so, from that, like, the ability to not really see them as they're approaching me, as well as, like, the looming dread of the Freddles, definitely, but I think Foxy was the one who got to me more. For Foxy, the existential dread came from the fact that, like, he could be doing something, and I won't even know about it, right? He could be, like, ready to jump scare me, and I don't even know about it. You know, just the entire game just has that sort of existential dread. If you can't see them as they approach, they could be at your doors, and for somebody who doesn't hear as well like me, you genuinely might not even fucking know that they're there because you can't hear the breathing. So, yeah, Fnaf 4 fucking terrifying, and the reason why I put it in the legit traumatized me IRL is, okay, so an additional thing to the whole realism thing was, I not only owned a dog, I think the dog was dead by that point, but my neighbor, or one or two of my neighbors also owned a dog, and if you don't know, there's an Easter egg in the game that, you can hear a dog barking, and I had dogs near me. And a playground rumor, this is like a theory that nobody talks about, that the dog that barks is barking because the animatronics are killing it. And I remember that the evidence for this was basically that, like, normally the dog will only bark when one of the 4 animatronics aren't currently hunting you down. So the whole theory was that one of the animatronics, like, went to a neighbor's house or something, or, you know, went somewhere and killed a dog killed or hurt the dog so that it couldn't alert anybody to come help you. Obviously that's ridiculous, but you can imagine how that sort of made it hit home a lot more for me, personally. And yeah, genuinely, this game, gave me legit anxiety for, a week. Like, I remember, like, I used to go to school with a feeling of existential dread, thinking, oh god, am I gonna go to bed tonight and have to, like, do the FNAF 4 thing? You know, apparently, you know, and it got so bad that genuinely a couple of times I actually hallucinated Foxy outside my door. I'm not joking. Like, I would be, like, laying in my bed, and then I'd see sort of just this orange streak suddenly dash across the door, and sometimes, like, I'd swear, like, obviously, like, my door would open naturally, and then I could swear I could see, like, a sort of, like, reddish-orange arm, like, sticking its arm in the door, like, opening it. Like, genuinely, this game, like, genuinely messed me up when I was a kid for a little while. I got over it pretty soon, but yeah, this is the scariest FNAF game for me. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on that. FNAF World, non-horror / joke game. UCN. I don't think this was, because I've heard a lot of people describe it as an arcade sort of game. I don't think it was ever supposed to be scary, so I'm gonna put it in non-horror joke games. FNAF 2, I think I'm gonna put it in had its moments. And, okay, so the game itself doesn't really scare me. I actually did play FNAF 2 when I was younger. I used to go to this, like, it was this very, like, small charity thing, like, where a bunch of kids used to go to, like, just hang out for a few hours. And they had a computer. And they used to have this rule where you were only allowed to use the computer for a certain amount of time. One of the other kids would play FNAF 2 and they'd used up all their computer time. So one of the staff members who was nearby told me that it was my turn, and I decided I was a FNAF fan after all, that I'd just play FNAF 2. This was in the era of unblocked websites, if you remember that. So, yeah, and I played FNAF 2, and honestly, I'd already watched Markiplier play it. I genuinely wasn't bothered. I knew what to do. I got through, like, nights 1 and 2 pretty fine. But there was one motherfucking animatronic that got to me, and no, it wasn't Wizard Foxy or Toilet Bonnie. No. It was the puppet, the marionette. And the reason, and I don't know why, but for some reason, the marionette really resonated with me. And it was this very slow burn thing. But the marionette actually became, like, the, like, main character of some of my earliest nightmares. In fact, the earliest nightmare I can remember is I was running through this hallway, and it was, like, a checkered white and black floor, and it was isolated. There was no walls. It was just the abyss. There was sort of like these thin, sort of invisible walls, sort of like, you know, like when you take a camera, like, out of bounds in a game, that sort of effect. You know, and it was third person. I wasn't in the perspective of the me that was running away, and but I just couldn't see my face. And the marionette was chasing me, but I couldn't really see the marionette. The marionette was, like, in the shadows, and I was running, and I was getting, like, really, really out of breath. And see, the nightmare part of it was that it was a never-ending loop, because it would have a different ending each time. I only ever had this nightmare once, but it's always stuck with me. You know, and I never escape in any of the endings. Some endings I get close, but a lot of the endings boil down to, like, I start, like, having, like, an asphyxiation fit on the floor, and then the marionette catches me, and then the dream would restart. You know, some of them would be like, I crash into a wall, I try and hide in a room, and then the marionette finds me, stuff like that. You know, stuff like that, yeah. Yeah, and the marionette also was the main character in a lot of other nightmares that I had. For a little while, not for that long, it was only for, like, a couple months. Like, it's weird, like, the marionette, even to this day, it's like, it's not like, it's still kind of creepy. It's a pretty good design for a horror character, but, like, it's not like it ever outright terrified me in the same way that FNAF 4 did. It's just that, you know, for some reason the marionette as a character just resonated with me for some reason. Yeah, so that's FNAF 2. FNAF 1. Ooh, this is controversial. Didn't get to me. I'm sorry, FNAF boomers, I'm sorry, FNAF 1 fans. I don't think FNAF 1 is scary. I was never creeped out by FNAF 1, even when I was a kid. Like, bearing in mind, I never played it, right? I didn't have the opportunity to play it, I was a poor-ass motherfucker, right? I didn't really have the opportunity to play FNAF 1 back in the day. So, yeah. You know, plus I was like 7, and luckily enough I had parents who were like, I don't think my kid should be playing this horror game. You know, I mean, I got hyper-fixated on it anyway, but, you know. Yeah, so I had to experience FNAF 1 vicariously through other people. I did have personal experience in watching people play it in person, though, and it just never got to me. The atmosphere, I don't know what people are talking about. I think the atmosphere is actually very dull. I don't think the character designs are creepy or imposing at all. I think actually the only character who is mildly creepy is actually Chica to me, and it's because I feel like Chica is just posed very well. It's not that her model is any more actively creepy. I just think, actually, okay, there is one element that does make Chica the creepiest animatronic in my opinion, and it's the whole, like, double mouth thing. You know, how she has, like, those spiral teeth. It reminds me of, have you seen that picture of, is it the Backrooms, where it's, like, one of the levels, and it's, like, a set of like, stairs, but they're teeth, and they, like, bend around? Like, it's, like, sort of thing. Yeah, definitely good, and, like, it's definitely, like, that weird moan that Chica does, but other than that, it really didn't get to me. I don't find it creepy at all. In fact, anything, I actually find FNAF 1 really dull. Like, in the few times I played, like, recreations of it, because, you know, I'm still a poor-ass bitch and can't afford to pay, like, for it on Steam. I'm still a poor-ass bitch, okay? So I haven't played the original game, but playing some very, very faithful and arguably better and more horrifying remakes of it? No, honestly, I don't get what people are talking about. So yeah, didn't get to me personally. This was, I think, update 1 FNAF World, or like beta FNAF World. Quite interesting, but, you know, non-horror joke game. FNAF 3 joke game. Sister location. I think, this one is definitely a toss-up. It could be either. It honestly could be either, because it did kind of had its moments, but I don't think any moments stuck with me as much as the marionette. So I think I'm gonna have to put it in didn't get me personally, but it was still a little bit better than FNAF 1. So Sister Location, obviously, yeah, isn't the scariest. It's a little bit scarier than FNAF 1, but the reason why Sister Location is not in the legit not scary thing is because I think especially Night 1 and Night 2 do genuinely hit on that sort of existential dread, and I think a lot of it is because nothing happens, especially in Night 1. I will admit, Night 1 still to this day, if I'm not, like, you know, even if I'm watching it vicariously, can genuinely sometimes tense me up, especially when you're in the vents. I think, and especially in controlled shock segments, I just feel like it's so effective doing that sort of fake out, nothing happens for Night 1. So this location really did nail that. And I think Night 2, arguably, if you're not a loser, and you're not an absolute fucking, like, get-good loser, probably you won't really experience much of the actual horror of the game in the first 2 nights, and a lot of the stress of it. So I feel like, especially the first 2 nights of Sister Location, do a lot to just build up this dread. Like, you know something's gonna happen, but you don't know when it's gonna happen. And I do genuinely feel like the Funtime Foxy section is really good. It, like, Sister Location, honestly, the more I think about it, is filled with this sort of existential dread that you know something is coming, you know something is gonna go wrong, but you just can't put a finger on it. It does the endings, I don't know, body horror doesn't get to me, so Enid as a concept is not that scary to me. I think that's kind of all I can say about Sister Location, yeah. Freddy in Space, non-horror joke game, glam rock, beat-em-up game. Ooh, Security Breach. I'm classifying this as Security Breach and Ruin. Legit not scary. Okay, Ruin is a lot better, but Security Breach just, do I really need to say why they're going in the legit not scary category? Too bright, cartoony art style, Gregory existing, glam rock, or should I say dad rock Freddy, and, white woman jump scare. And the staff bots. I fucking hate the staff bots, they ruin the game for me. Yeah, sure, Ruin does fix a lot of the problems, but I still think that it's just... ranking it alongside FNAF 1 in this location would be an insult, I think, personally. So yeah, I don't think any more really needs to be said about Security Breach of Ruin. Honestly, the scariest parts of it is the amount of OSHA violations that Fazbear Incorporated do. FNAF 3, controversial take, scary. And I will fucking argue with anybody who tells me that FNAF 3 did not have probably the best fucking atmosphere of the series. It's just something about FNAF 3's atmosphere. Okay, so if you couldn't guess from a lot of the heavy-handed jokes, yes, I am actually autistic. My autistic ass fucking hates eye contact. This fucking child killer ass motherfucker loves making eye contact. Eye contact with a fucking teddy bear is enough to send me into fucking existential shock. Fucking eye contact with another human being is enough to have me shaking and crying on the floor. And a fucking child-killing serial killer staring at me from behind a glass pane? Fucking terrifying. Having him fucking death staring me from behind a doorway? Fucking terrifying. Not to mention the green aesthetic is really good for atmosphere, as well as just the general darkness the game has. Like, something I never really hear a lot of people talking about is like the difference in tone with the phone calls. Like, most of the phone calls are so serious, there's not really any banter like there is in FNAF 1 and FNAF 2. And yeah, like, sure, the phone dude is kind of funny, but like, he still just has this sort of uneasiness around him, and the phone guy he just talks so seriously and businesslike. He isn't like this sort of bright light, this sort of one comedic element like he was in the other two games. And just in general, like the appearance of Springtrap, and okay, a lot of the Phantoms, I will admit, are not that scary. Phantom Foxy genuinely got me as a kid, because yet again, it's an existential dread. You never know when he's going to appear, and he just stands there, and if you don't look at him directly, if you sit in like just the right spot, he's like looking at the camera, staring into your soul, and he's tall and imposing as well, and as somebody as short and insecure as I am, that fucking terrifies me. Yeah, like, FNAF 3, genuinely scary, and yes, I did play FNAF 3, although it was the mobile version in 2015 whilst I was on a school trip. One of my friends, like, we both sort of snuck away on the edge of the group, and he got his phone out, and I played, like, Night 3. Yeah, pretty cool memory, pretty cool game. FNAF 3, criminally underrated. Fight me, FNAF 3 was one of the best FNAF games. Jump scares be damned. Actually, Phantom BB had a genuinely really scary jump scare. Actually, no. Tell a lie. Fucking Marionette. I think this game is why the Marionette is fucking terrifying to me. I fucking like Phantom Puppet is like, oh my god, that jump scare is the scariest fucking jump scare in the series for me. Just having that motherfucker, like, staring into my soul whilst the entire game has a fucking epileptic fit. Like, yeah, that shit is fucking scary, okay? I don't think I need to say more, okay? I think I've made my point. I'm a big FNAF 3 fanboy. Pizzeria Simulator didn't get to me. Did not get to me, okay? I think the salvage, I haven't had a chance to play this one, but it's another one that I've sort of had played vicariously through other people. But yeah, salvage, I think is honestly underrated, though I will say, it's one shining moment, was the first one with Scrap Baby. Honestly, that sort of, just the whole you know, just that whole sort of, like, I will say, yeah, they do sort of touch on that dread, but I feel like they're a little bit too obvious for me. They're not subtle enough for me. You know, there's no dread, there's no realism. At this point for me, like, this sort of sci-fi, more body horror, sci-fi horror, claustrophobia simulator that FNAF 6 is, doesn't really get to me. Really good game. I love FNAF 6 from a gameplay standpoint, but from a horror standpoint, I will admit it is lacking for me. I think the Tycoon part of the game is a big reason for that. I will admit, okay, the one part of the game that is kind of creepy is Corn Maze. Candy Maze, whatever it's called. Honestly, that one image of Spring Bonnie standing over Susie, honestly, pretty scary. I will admit, it's a pretty scary image. It kind of goes hard. Yeah, but, and just the night sections, stressful, yes. Panic-inducing, sometimes. Scary, no. I don't think they're scary. They don't get to me personally. Why do you think I said personally? I get why other people are scared by it. But just personally, FNAF 6 is just a type of horror that doesn't scare me. Help Wanted. Honestly, I would say, controversially, I'd say it had its moments. I think a lot of people, okay, for me, had its moments as in vent repair. I don't think they're that scary. I will admit, I don't think vent repair is that scary, personally. VR is something I've unfortunately never owned. I'm a broke-ass bitch, and fuck am I playing the flat version. So yeah, I haven't played it, I've only played it vicariously for other people, but just, you know, from the videos themselves, like, imagining myself in that situation, you know, not scary. I'm going off the base game, by the way, not the DLC. Of the DLC, I think it's roughly the same, by the way. Like, I think the DLC is honestly less scary than the base game. I think the FNAF 3 definitely loses most of what made FNAF 3 scary for me personally in VR. The difference, okay, the difference is in Springtrap, is in, like, when Springtrap's crawling down the vent at you and there's nothing you can do about it, that is actually scary to me. That sort of loss of power is honestly really fucking scary to me. Hats off. I do think the FNAF 2 thing where they're, like, you know, where, like, for the mask, when they're, like, in front of you is done better here. I do think that's done better here. That's definitely a highlight. And then FNAF 1, okay, I don't think it's that scary in VR. It's scarier in VR. I think the atmosphere hits harder in VR, like any horror game would in VR. But honestly, I think the only, like, and the most scary moment from this entire game, I think, is when, like, you know, it's when, like, if you, like, stare at the animatronics with the lights on as they're walking past, they'll suddenly stop and, like, stare directly at you and turn around, and if you don't close the door fast enough, they'll jump scare you and kill you. That shit is fucking terrifying. If the rest of the game was like that, that would be going on, like, scary or legit traumatize me IRL. But yeah, I think whilst it has its moments, yeah, the game personally doesn't scare me that much. Like, I wouldn't put it in my mind as this sort of memorable thing. FNAF AR, legit not scary. The designs for the animatronics are just too cartoony. I think, honestly, if the game had a bit more of a realistic art style, it would really get to me. I think, honestly, okay, here's an idea. FNAF AR remade into a VR remake. If that happened, maybe this would be going to legit traumatize me IRL. FNAF Plus, it never came out, and FNAF World Halloween Edition going in there. So there's the tier list. I will save it. There you go, it's saved. I'm not gonna download it, but yeah. So yeah, that's my official, personal, not subject to change. I will argue with people on any of these points. If they want to criticize me in the comments, I will fucking fight you IRL. Meet me outside Aldi, 5 o'clock. I'll bring a shiv. Anyway, So this is my tier list. Be sure to leave your own tier list, by the way, in the comments, if you want to make a tier list and link it, or if you just want to tell me, like, in bullet points or whatever your preferred format is, just put it in the comments. Or just any notable, really scary moments you got from FNAF. And it can be a fan game, it can be a mainline game, it can even just be a part of the lore that you found particularly terrifying and, like, really sat with you. You know, like, I'm looking for sort of personal experiences, personal stories, you know what I mean, yes? You know, yeah, so, I don't think there's really anything else in this video. This was sort of just a fun little experimental thing. I thought I'd do something pretty chill, something different, you know, and yeah, you know, FNAF has been a hyperfixation for a long time, so I love making videos on it. I should probably do more videos on FNAF. I definitely have a FNAF theory that I actually want to do. It will not be like the other FNAF theories, don't worry, I'm not going to do this ultra serious thing. It will be presented with about the level of professionalism you would expect from me, alright? Okay, so yeah, I think it's about that time to say, you've been travelling along the hyperfixation station. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day comically. If you enjoyed the video and want to be a lovely human being, be sure to share it to your mum, your nan, your serial killer granddad, your cursed animatronic son-in-law, and if you're feeling especially lovely, you can even recommend this video to your average local marionette puppeteer that traumatizes children everywhere, and is also probably a nonce. And other than that, it's about time in the video for me to say bye.